The millionaire CEO's wedding was interrupted by his ex-wife holding a baby. The day Adrian Knight, ruthless billionaire CEO, divorced the woman he claimed to love, he thought he had lost nothing. But when Amara disappeared, carrying a secret he would never forgive, his empire and his heart both shattered. Years later, on the day he's about to marry another, a tiny innocent face appears in the crowd, unraveling everything he thought he knew. A son he never knew, a love he betrayed, and a mother who will never forgive easily. Can Adrian fight for the family he destroyed, or has time and betrayal made the past impossible to redeem? Before we dive into today's story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest emotional and thrilling tales. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of this roller coaster story. The glass walls of Knight Empire's top floor shimmered under the harsh morning light, but inside Adrian Knight's office, everything felt ice cold. Adrian stood behind his massive desk like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Amara stood across from him, hands trembling, clutching the thin divorce file like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Her heart hammered against her ribs, loud enough she was terrified he might hear it. The silence was suffocating. Adrian didn't give her a chance to speak. He snatched the papers from her hands and slapped his signature across the last page with violent precision. Ink dug into the paper like a wound. Then he flung the file toward her, papers scattering across the glossy floor. His voice was sharp enough to cut skin. "Take your freedom, Amara." Her breath caught. Freedom. He made it sound like a curse. She bent to gather the scattered pages, her fingers shaking. She noticed smudges, her fingerprints mixed with her tears on the glossy surface. "Adrian, please," her voice cracked, soft, pleading. "Just hear me. Someone set me up." He slammed his palm against the desk, making her flinch. "Don't insult my intelligence." His tone was venom and marble, cold, dead. "I saw the bank transfers," he continued. "My mother told me everything. You married me for money." End of story. Amara's throat tightened. "Your mother lied," she whispered. She forced herself to meet his eyes, though every instinct urged her to disappear. She hated that we married without a wedding, without her approval. My mother has no reason to lie." His eyes narrowed with cruel certainty. Amara swallowed hard. He truly believed it. Her voice trembled, barely audible. "But I loved you." A muscle flickered in his jaw, but the rest of him remained carved from stone. "You loved my money." "No." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I loved the man who held me when I cried. The man who brought me coffee at midnight when I painted. The man who—" "That man was a distraction," Adrian cut in. "I don't have time for sentimental delusions." "Sentimental delusions." He tossed the words like garbage. Amara's breath stuttered. "Adrian, we used to be friends." "We were never friends." The chill in his voice was absolute, final. It was like he wanted her heart to shatter. She stepped closer, desperate to reach the man she once knew. "Please listen." He stepped back as if her presence contaminated the air. "I am listening, and I'm done." Her body turned numb. Her heartbeat slowed like the world was draining color. "You're making a mistake," she whispered. "No," he said. "You are walking out of my life exactly the way you walked into it, uninvited." Her breath fractured. He picked up the divorce envelope and shoved it toward her chest. She caught it just before it fell. "Sign it," he demanded. "I don't love you." Never did something inside her cracked, not loudly, quiet like glass breaking underwater. She stared at him, searching for the Adrian she once woke up beside. The man who kissed her forehead while she slept. The man who whispered that she was his peace. She found nothing, only a frozen stranger with her husband's eyes. Her fingers tightened around the pen. She signed her name slowly, every stroke of ink carving through her heart. When she was done, Adrian didn't look at the papers, or her. He simply turned away and stared out the floor-to-ceiling window, dismissing her existence like she was a mistake he finally cleaned up. "I wasted 2 years on you," he said quietly, almost to himself. Amara couldn't breathe. She backed away, step by unsteady step. The office blurred through her tears. Desks, polished marble, faces of employees watching silently, pitying her humiliation but too scared to intervene. Her voice was small, hoarse. "Goodbye, Adrian." He didn't turn around, not even to watch her leave. She walked toward the elevator, her legs strangely numb. Each step felt like walking through heavy water. Her lungs struggled to hold air. The elevator ride felt endless. People entered and left the car, talking about deadlines and profits, oblivious to the woman quietly breaking beside them. When the doors opened to the lobby, she stumbled out. Outside, the city noise crashed into her. Car horns, footsteps, rain starting to sprinkle onto the pavement like cold needles. The skyscrapers around her stretched into the sky, indifferent. Her vision began to tunnel. She pressed a hand to her chest. Why does it hurt to breathe? Her knees buckled. The envelope with divorce papers slipped from her hand and scattered across the wet pavement. Her body swayed. Voices around her blurred. "Miss, are you okay?" She couldn't answer. The world spun. Everything went black. Amara collapses on the cold pavement. And when she wakes up hours later in a hospital bed, the nurse tells her, "You're pregnant." The hospital room was too white, too quiet, too clean to match the chaos inside Amara's heart. The nurse's words echoed in her skull, slow and unreal. "You're pregnant." Amara's fingers curled around the bedsheet, gripping it like a lifeline. Her breath stuttered. A child. His child. A painful mix of emotions surged through her, fear, disbelief, and a fierce love she didn't understand yet. The nurse gently placed a small sonogram image on her palm. Tiny, fragile, a heartbeat suspended in a sea of black. Amara pressed it against her chest, whispering through tears. "I'm not alone." But the next wave hit her harder, Adrian's voice echoing in her mind. "I don't love you." Never did. She could almost feel the divorce papers still cutting into her palms. This child didn't deserve that world, not the coldness, not the manipulation, not a father who believed lies instead of love. She whispered to the silent room, "I'll protect you, even if I have to do it alone." That night she packed her small duffel bag in silence. One pair of jeans, 2 shirts, a few art brushes and pencils tied with ribbon. The sonogram carefully slid into the front pocket of her bag. She walked out of the hospital and into the rain, letting the water mix with her grief. Behind her, glass towers glowed like cold diamonds. Night Empire loomed in the distance, untouchable and ruthless. She didn't look back. The bus rattled toward a quiet suburban town hours away from the city. Fields stretched out on both sides. Sunlight replaced the suffocating skyscrapers. Amara sat with one hand placed gently over her belly. She whispered, "This is where we start over." She searched online for small jobs. Teaching art would cover rent, food, and baby essentials. Barely, but enough. She found a tiny apartment above a bookstore. The air always smelled of paper and fresh ink. The landlady, Mrs. Porter, smiled when she saw the paint-stained brushes poking out of Amara's bag. "You're an artist," she said warmly. "Artists were welcome here." Amara exhaled for the first time in weeks. At night, the baby kicked softly, like a promise stretching inside her ribs. She'd place her hand on her stomach and whisper bedtime stories about colors and dreams. "I won't let anyone hurt you," she said into the darkness. "I won't let anyone take you from me." 9 months passed. A cry echoed in a dim hospital delivery room. A tiny boy was placed onto her chest, warm and perfect. dark curls, brown skin. But when his eyes fluttered open, blue, Adrian's blue, her heart cracked open. "You're mine," she whispered. "My son." She named him Aiden Reyes. No Knight attached, not because she was erasing his father, but because she was giving her son freedom. She kissed his forehead. "You will grow up loved." Not owned life became a ritual of survival and sweetness. Morning feedings, warm milk, soft lullabies, canvas sheets spread across the apartment floor. Aiden slept in a hand-painted crib she restored from the thrift store. She painted tiny stars along the wooden bars, whispering dreams into each brushstroke. In the little community center, Amara taught children to paint. Their small hands smeared colors across paper with excitement. They loved her, her softness, her patience, her quiet joy. Their parents complimented her gentle teaching. Some even asked, "How do you stay so calm?" If only they knew the storm she survived. At night, after Aiden slept curled against her chest, Amara stayed awake painting small canvases. Each painting sold for a little money, just enough to keep the lights on. But every night ended the same way, her fingers drifting to Aiden's soft hair and a silent vow filling her chest. He will never know coldness. He will never feel unwanted. Meanwhile, in the distant city, Adrian Knight stood on magazine covers, sharper and richer than ever. His smile disappeared from every photo. His eyes grew colder. He became the ruthless CEO the world feared, closing deals without blinking, dismantling companies without mercy. In every interview, he stood beside Victoria Sinclair, a stunning model with fame attached to her name. Reporters loved them. They called them the power couple. Victoria clung to his arm like a trophy. Adrian remained expressionless, hollow inside. People assumed he was heartless. He played along. Better to be feared, better to feel nothing. One evening, after putting Aiden to bed, Amara sat on the worn sofa with a cup of weak tea and her paint-stained laptop. She rarely searched anything about Adrian. It hurt too much. But tonight she scrolled absent-mindedly through her newsfeed. A flashing headline stopped her breath. "Billionaire Adrian Knight announces wedding with Victoria Sinclair." Her hand trembled. The mug slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor. Glass scattered. Hot tea burned her skin. But she didn't feel anything, not compared to the ache tearing her heart apart. Her son slept peacefully in the next room, unaware that the man with his same blue eyes was moving on with a woman who wasn't his mother. Amara stared at the news photo, Adrian in a tuxedo, Victoria gripping his arm, smiling. Perfect, untouched by their past, her vision blurred, her breath turned shaky. She whispered to the empty room, "So he gets a new life." Her eyes lifted to the closed nursery door. "And I'm still hiding." The baby monitor crackled softly. Aiden stirred in his crib. Amara whispered into the darkness, not knowing her voice shook. "If he marries her, Adrian can never find out about you." The small apartment smelled of fresh paint and worn wood, a haven Amara had built for herself and Aiden. The quiet hum of the heater filled the room, mingling with the soft breaths of her sleeping son. It was a sanctuary, fragile but hers, a world she had carved from fear and determination. A sudden knock at the door shattered the silence. Amara froze, her hand instinctively going to cover Aiden, who stirred in his crib. The knock came again, sharper, more insistent. Her heart pounded. She had avoided unexpected visitors. She had avoided everyone. And now someone new. She approached the door cautiously, chest tight, breath shallow. Through the peephole, a man in a tailored suit stood, holding a leather briefcase. A lawyer. Official. Serious. Her stomach twisted. She opened the door crack, voice trembling. "Yes. May I help you?" The lawyer stepped forward, holding out his hand with a thick envelope. "Ms. Reyes," he said, voice smooth but urgent, "I represent someone who knows about your child. They're interested in acquiring certain rights." Her pulse surged. She stiffened. "Acquire? My child?" He nodded. "You must understand, they know he is Adrian Knight's son." Time froze. The words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and poisonous. Amara's chest tightened. "Adrian knows," she whispered. The lawyer shook his head. "Not yet, but someone has taken steps to ensure he will. And if you continue hiding, Ms. Reyes, it will put your son in danger." Her hand flew to her mouth. Her son. Her beautiful, tiny son. Everything she had worked to protect, everything she had promised him, was at risk. Tears threatened to spill, but she blinked them back, desperate to stay composed. I need time," she whispered, voice fragile but steady. "You don't have time," the lawyer said firmly. "They will act soon. You need to make a decision." Amara felt the walls of her safe world crumble. The paintings, the canvases, the soft music, the faint smell of coffee, all meaningless if Aiden's life was threatened. She sank onto the edge of the sofa, her mind racing. Her fingers trembled as they brushed over the sonogram she had kept for months, tucked into her wallet. The tiny heartbeat, the promise of life, of hope. Everything was at risk. She realized then that hiding was no longer an option. She had thought she could protect him from Adrian, from the Knights, from the world. But the world had found her. It had always known where she was, watching. She jumped up and began to pack a bag, frantically but methodically. Aiden's diapers, blankets, a few bottles, clothes, each item a small shield against the chaos waiting outside their door. Her hands shook, but her mind sharpened. She had no one to trust but herself, and she would fight for her son. Every brushstroke, every sleepless night, every whispered lullaby had led to this moment. Amara glanced at Aiden, curled peacefully in his crib. The sight of him ignited a fierce protective fire in her chest. She whispered softly, brushing a curl off his forehead. "You are my heart, my life, and I will not let anyone take you from me." The lawyer watched silently, his expression unreadable. "You must understand," he said. "What you decide now will set the course for both your lives." Amara swallowed hard, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her sanctuary was gone. Her freedom was threatened. And the child she had worked so hard to protect was no longer safe. She zipped Aiden's small bag, holding it to her chest as though it could shield him from every danger. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to vanish, to disappear into the world where no one could find them. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, whispered, she had to confront this. She could not run forever. The child's father, the man who had abandoned her, who had walked away from everything, needed to know. Her knees weakened. She sank to the floor, clutching the bag, breathing in the quiet of the apartment one last time. The walls seemed to pulse, echoing the frantic rhythm of her heart. Each beat said the same thing. She could not hide any longer. Amara stood, her decision crystallized like ice. She would no longer be a shadow, no longer silent, no longer hiding from the truth. The weight of the future pressed down on her shoulders. Fear, dread, uncertainty. They were all there, coiling around her chest. But there was also determination, steel beneath the skin, a promise etched into her soul. She gathered Aiden into her arms, wrapping him tightly in a blanket. He stirred slightly, opening his eyes, innocent and trusting. Amara kissed his forehead, whispering her resolve. "I will protect you," she said. "I will fight for you. And you will know your father, whether he wants it or not." The lawyer handed her a card. "Take this. You may need it." Amara didn't look at it, simply tucking it into her coat pocket. Her gaze was fixed forward on the world outside her apartment, the street she had avoided for years. The city was alive, loud, indifferent. She could hear car horns, distant voices, footsteps rushing past the door. But for the first time in months, she felt something else beneath the fear. Resolve. Her apartment, the soft light, the gentle smell of paints. Everything faded behind her. She stepped into the hallway, bag pressed to her chest. Every step echoed in her ears, loud and determined. The past was behind her. The world ahead was uncertain. But she was ready. Her hand grazed the elevator button, and she pressed it without hesitation. Aiden cooed softly in her arms, small fingers curling around her thumb. She smiled, a ghost of hope against the storm brewing outside. The elevator doors closed, the soft ding masking the world beyond. The soft hum carried her upward toward a confrontation she had dreaded, but now embraced. She whispered to him, barely audible above the hum, "We're going to your father." Her voice was steady, her resolve unshakable. Fear was there, but it no longer ruled her. The storm was coming, and she was walking straight into it. Every step toward that confrontation was a declaration. She would not be silent. She would not hide. She would not cower. The doors opened to the street. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving puddles that reflected the gray sky. The city looked indifferent, but Amara did not care. Nothing outside mattered as much as the small life in her arms. She adjusted the blanket, securing him against her chest. Aiden's eyes met hers, wide and trusting. Her lips curved in a determined smile. For months she had lived in shadows. For months she had avoided the man who had broken her heart. For months she had survived on courage, on love, on the promise she whispered to herself every night. Now the shadows were gone. The silence was broken, and the reckoning was near. Amara took a deep breath, her chest swelling with purpose. Her steps were firm, her mind clear, her heart beating with determination. The world would know her son. The man who had abandoned her would know, and she would not let him forget it. The streets stretched before her, endless and indifferent, her bag pressed to her chest. Aiden nestled safely inside. Every beat of his tiny heart echoed in hers. She was no longer running. She was walking toward the storm, and nothing, neither fear nor threat nor betrayal, would stop her. Amara leans closer to Aiden, voice trembling but resolute. "We're going to your father, and he's going to know everything." The grand hall of the Avalon estate glittered under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, each droplet catching the soft glow of 100 golden bulbs. Marble floors reflected the light like water, smooth and cold, beneath the guests' polished shoes. Every seat was filled, every eye turned toward the stage, and the air smelled faintly of roses, perfume, and something more insidious. Anticipation. Adrian Knight stood at the altar, flawless, sharp black tuxedo tailored to perfection, blue eyes scanning the room with a measured detachment, his jaw set like stone. Not a muscle betrayed emotion, not a flicker of hesitation. To the world, he was untouchable, a billionaire, a strategist, a man who never let personal weakness show. Victoria Sinclair glided down the aisle like a goddess wrapped in ivory lace, her smile dazzling, her hand resting lightly on Adrian's arm. Whispers filled the air as she passed. He finally found someone worthy. He's moving on beautifully. The words stung like ice against Amara's skin, though she was nowhere near the hall. She could imagine the scene, each detail vivid in her mind. The priest cleared his throat, voice deep and resonant. "If anyone has a reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever. Hold your peace." The room held its breath, a silence so thick it pressed against every chest, every thought. Adrian's eyes swept over the crowd, scanning faces for approval, for envy, for respect. Nothing of the past lingered here. No memory of a young woman with brown skin, hair falling in curls, eyes full of trust and love, of hope betrayed. He had shut it away like a locked vault in his mind. Victoria's smile widened as Adrian's lips remained the same, perfectly composed. No flicker of emotion, no hesitation. This was exactly how it should be. The photographer clicked, the camera's flash reflecting in the polished chandeliers. Every detail captured for social media, for headlines, for the world to consume. Adrian had become an image, a brand, untouchable and frozen in elegance. But somewhere deep inside him, an unfamiliar tug began, a whisper he tried to ignore. It was nothing. He told himself it was nothing. A flicker of something past, a memory best left buried. Guests shifted in their seats. Some leaned in, curious. Some pretended not to notice. But everyone could feel the tension in the air, the weight of expectation pressing down. The bridesmaids lined up, holding bouquets like shields, each one smiling politely, though their eyes were sharp and observant. They had heard rumors. Everyone had heard rumors. Adrian Knight didn't just marry. He calculated. He assessed. He chose with cold precision. The organ played softly, a melodic undertone beneath the murmurs and shuffling feet. Victoria's heels clicked against the floor in perfect rhythm, echoing in the hall. Adrian's eyes never left her face. Her laughter was a polished performance, her beauty carefully curated. Nothing spontaneous, nothing real. The priest's voice cut through the quiet once more. Do you, Adrian Knight, take Victoria Sinclair to be your lawfully wedded wife? Adrian's lips pressed into a thin line. He answered mechanically, without hesitation, without emotion. I do. Victoria's smile reached perfection. The audience murmured in approval. They whispered about the empire, about power, about wealth. They whispered about a love story perfectly staged. Adrian's mother sat in the front row, regal and calculating. Her eyes scanned the crowd, satisfied. Everything was proceeding exactly as she had planned. The young woman she had destroyed years ago, forgotten, erased, gone. But life has a way of defying even the most meticulous plans. The photographer clicked again, capturing the moment Adrian and Victoria joined hands. The room held its collective breath. This was history, a union of power, wealth, and prestige. Adrian's posture was impeccable, a statue in human form, no tremor of doubt, no flicker of regret. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a tiny part of him recoiled, a memory of warmth, a memory of a small hand in his, a memory of soft laughter and midnight whispers. He shook his head slightly, suppressing it. This was not the time, this was not the place, this was the life he chose. The priest took a deep breath, preparing to pronounce them man and wife. The hall was still, waiting, poised, perfect. And then it happened. The massive oak doors at the end of the aisle slammed open with a thunderous crash. The chandeliers swayed slightly, catching the guests' attention. Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Heads turned, eyes widened, whispers turned into shocked murmurs. Something unexpected had just shattered the flawless symmetry of the event. Through the doorway, standing tall despite her nerves, her lips pressed tight in determination, was Amara. She held a bundle in her arms. A small, fragile, living bundle. The room froze. Adrian's heart skipped, though he tried to remain composed. The blue in his eyes caught the light, icy and calculating, but something inside shifted, something he hadn't felt in years. Gasps turned into whispers, whispers into shocked exclamations. Victoria's grip on Adrian's arm tightened. Her smile faltered. She whispered, Who is that? Amara stepped forward, each movement deliberate. The bundle in her arms was unmistakable. The soft curls, the tiny hands, the delicate features. The crowd murmured, disbelief painted across every face. The room felt impossibly small, the walls closing in with tension. Adrian's chest tightened. Something raw, uncontrollable surged through him. Recognition, shock, anger, confusion. The child in Amara's arms stirred, eyes opening to meet Adrian's for the first time. Blue, his eyes, the perfect world he had built, the empire, the wedding, the image, cracked in an instant. The room was no longer about celebration. It was about revelation, about truths buried and now exposed. Amara's voice was calm but filled with steel. She held her son close, unwavering, her eyes locked on Adrian's. No fear, no hesitation, only courage, only resolve. The guests were silent. The priest's voice faltered, unsure how to continue. No one moved, no one breathed. It was as if time itself had paused. Adrian felt the air tighten around him. Every muscle in his body reacted, instinct screaming. This was impossible. This was a life he had erased, a life he thought he had left behind. And yet, here it was. Amara. His past, his son, his mistake. The perfect wedding had stopped. The flawless ceremony had shattered. And in that moment, Adrian realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The baby in Amara's arms stirred, cooing softly, eyes meeting Adrian's icy blue gaze, and the entire hall fell into stunned silence. The hall felt smaller somehow, though it had always been grand. The chandeliers glittered as if mocking the chaos unfolding beneath them. Every guest's gaze was fixed, every whisper sliced through the air like a knife. Victoria's hand flew to her chest, her pale fingers trembling. Horror and disbelief contorted her features. This isn't possible," she whispered, voice barely audible over the stunned silence. Adrian's eyes widened, sharp blue eyes locking onto the small figure in Amara's arms. The world seemed to slow. Everything he had built, every careful move, every mask he wore, it all dissolved in the instant he saw the child. Amara stepped forward, steady despite the storm surrounding her. The baby in her arms stirred, tiny fingers curling instinctively around her necklace. Her voice trembled just slightly, but carried enough weight to shatter the polished atmosphere. "Adrian, this is your son." The words hung in the air. Impossible, yet undeniable. Adrian's jaw went slack. The mask of perfection faltered, just for a heartbeat. His mind raced, refusing to accept what he was seeing. He blinked. Number. It can't be. The child in Amara's arms looked up, eyes wide, innocent, vulnerable, blue, his own eyes. Adrian's chest tightened. A cold dread settled deep in his bones. The carefully constructed world he had lived in, the armor he wore, the certainty of his life, all crumbled under the weight of a single truth. He whispered, barely audible even to himself, "Impossible." His voice was shaky, foreign to him. Never had Adrian Knight sounded uncertain. Never had he felt fear. Never had he stared at a child and felt the terrifying force of love and responsibility collide. Amara held the baby closer, steady, unwavering. She met Adrian's gaze without flinching. Years of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak had forged her resolve into steel. "You lied to me," she said softly. "About everything." Adrian shook his head, trying to deny it, to rationalize it, to suppress the surge of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. But the moment the child yawned and stretched tiny fingers, reaching for him, all defenses fell away. Guests murmured, whispers turning into audible gasps. Some shielded their children's eyes from the tension. Some simply stared, transfixed, unable to look away from the raw emotion crackling in the air. Victoria stumbled backward, clinging to Adrian's arm. "Explain this," she demanded, voice sharp, though tremors betrayed her fear. "I don't understand." Adrian barely heard her. All focus, all awareness was drawn to the small life in Amara's arms. He studied the delicate features, the curl of the hair, the soft round cheeks, the faint crease between the eyebrows. Every detail mirrored his own. It was undeniable. This was his son. A chill ran down his spine, leaving goosebumps in its wake. The world around him dissolved into noise. The wedding, the applause, the cameras, none of it mattered. Amara's voice broke the haze again. "I didn't hide him to hurt you," she said, eyes glistening. "I hid him because I had to protect him. From you. From this world." Adrian's hands trembled slightly. He reached out, almost unconsciously, wanting to touch the child, to confirm what his eyes already knew. The child stirred at the motion, cooing softly. Time seemed suspended as Adrian knelt slightly, lowering himself to the child's level without realizing it. The baby blinked up at him. Recognition? Instinct? Something he could not explain. A sharp gasp escaped from the crowd. Some whispered rumors, some voiced disbelief. None of it mattered. Adrian's mind raced, trying to process the enormity of the revelation. Years lost, moments stolen, a life he had never known. He looked at Amara, voice choked, barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her expression softened, pain and defiance mingling. "I couldn't. You weren't ready. You didn't want me ready. And now, he deserves the truth." The baby's tiny fingers twitched, reaching toward Adrian as if sensing something. Something primal, something deep in the core of his being. Adrian's hand hovered, trembling over the child. The connection was instantaneous, unbreakable. And then, in that moment of fragile silence, a sound cut through. A voice, tiny, uncertain. "Da, da." The room froze. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Victoria's face went pale. Adrian's chest constricted, lungs suddenly too tight to breathe. The single word shattered every wall he had built. The baby, his baby, had spoken to him. A recognition, a bond, a demand for attention and love that could not be ignored. Adrian's knees buckled slightly. The icy control, the ruthless mask, everything he had been, melted in an instant. He reached out, hand shaking, barely daring to believe it. Amara watched him, expression guarded but tinged with relief. The truth was out. The child had spoken. And for the first time in years, Adrian Knight was confronted not with power or control, but with love. The crowd remained silent, unsure of what to do, as if witnessing something sacred. The perfect wedding had been eclipsed. No vows, no rings, no ceremony mattered. Only the raw, unfiltered moment unfolding before them. Adrian's lips trembled. He bent forward, closer, eyes wide and unblinking. I... His voice broke entirely, swallowed by emotion he had spent years denying. The baby cooed again, reaching for him, tiny hands clutching at air. And Adrian realized, with a force that made his heart ache, that this child, this tiny, fragile life, was the living proof of everything he had ignored, everything he had lost, and everything he now desperately wanted to protect. Victoria stepped back, unsure, horrified, powerless. The cameras flashed, the whispers surged, but Adrian saw nothing but the small face in Amara's arms. The room seemed suspended, time frozen, hearts beating in collective anticipation of what would happen next. Adrian's voice, barely a whisper, carried across the hall. This can't be. It's impossible." But the tiny voice rang again, clear and innocent. "Da, da." The word echoed, undeniable, undeniable in its simplicity and power. It pierced every layer of pride, every wall of indifference, every mask he had worn. And in that instant, Adrian Knight knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The baby's tiny blue eyes locked onto Adrian's face, and in that pure, unguarded moment, he whispered to Amara, trembling, This is real. Our son said my name." The corridor outside the grand ballroom felt impossibly long, silent except for the distant murmurs of shocked guests and the soft clicks of polished shoes on marble. Adrian's grip on Amara's arm was firm, unyielding. She didn't resist, not because she feared him, but because she knew she had no choice. The private room he led her to was stark, minimalist, cold, glass walls, black leather chairs, a table that could swallow a person whole. Everything here whispered power, control, domination. It was Adrian Knight's world, and she had been pulled back into it, whether she wanted to be or not. "You hid my son from me." Adrian's voice was low, almost a growl, but every syllable was sharp, deliberate. "You lied to me. You threw me away." Amara lifted her chin, meeting his gaze, refusing to let him see the fear and exhaustion etched on her face. "I hid him to protect him," she said softly. "From you. From the world. From people like your mother who would see him as nothing but a pawn in your games." Adrian's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being challenged. He wasn't used to hearing the truth spoken so calmly while his anger simmered just beneath the surface. "You don't get to decide that," he snapped. "This is my son. My blood. And you—" His hand gestured sharply toward her. "You kept him from me." The baby stirred in her arms, tiny eyes blinking sleepily. Aiden's small fingers grasped at Amara's blouse, completely unaware of the storm raging around him. Amara's heart ached. She had promised to shield him from this chaos, and now chaos had found them. Adrian's blue eyes locked on the child. He swallowed hard, voice trembling slightly, though he forced it back into coldness. "You will stay with me until the DNA test confirms what I already know. This is not negotiable." Amara's heart sank. He didn't trust her. He didn't believe she had loved him or that she had acted in their child's best interest. Everything she had built for these months, the quiet life, the safety, the love, was being ripped away in an instant. She tried to steady her voice. "This isn't a game. You can't just—" "You will do as I say," he interrupted, his tone final, leaving no room for argument. "No running, no hiding. You, the child, and this penthouse, until we know the truth." Amara's chest constricted. The penthouse, the life Adrian inhabited, opulent, suffocating, and unyielding. Her sanctuary was gone. Her home, her routines, her freedom, all replaced with walls she had no control over. She glanced at Aiden, small and vulnerable in her arms. I won't let him be hurt here," she whispered. Adrian's gaze flickered, a hint of recognition, but it vanished immediately, replaced with the cold determination that had always defined him. The penthouse was impossibly large, every surface polished, every corner gleaming, but it felt empty, sterile, a home for power, not for love. Amara stepped carefully, cradling Aiden, aware of every security camera, every reflection, every potential witness. Adrian led them to a suite overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered beneath them, lights like distant stars, untouchable and unreachable. He placed Aiden gently in a custom crib by the floor-to-ceiling window. The child stirred, curious about the new space, his tiny fingers reaching for the light reflecting on the glass. Amara's chest tightened. The crib was beautiful, yes, but it was a symbol. Her child, her son, was now trapped in a world she couldn't control. "You will follow my rules," Adrian said, voice low, commanding, yet under it was a tremor she hadn't heard before. "I won't," Amara began, but he silenced her with a look. The hours passed slowly. Dinner arrived on silver trays, but Amara barely touched it, her mind circling the uncertainty of the days to come. Aiden napped fitfully in the crib, exhausted from the emotional upheaval. Amara stayed close, brushing back curls from his forehead, whispering soft promises she hoped would reach him, even in sleep. Adrian lingered near the door, watching silently, his hands clasped behind his back. He wasn't the man who abandoned her anymore. This man was different, threatened, unfamiliar. Night fell. The city lights sparkled like 1,000 candles, indifferent to the storm inside the penthouse. Amara settled into a chair beside the crib, exhaustion threatening to pull her under. Her eyes drifted over the sleeping child, remembering the tiny kicks in her womb, the midnight whispers, the first time he opened his eyes and saw her face. Adrian remained near the window, hands pressed lightly against the glass. His reflection merged with the skyline, a man divided between his past arrogance and a dawning realization of what truly mattered. For years he had built walls around his heart, walls made of control, fear, pride, and ambition. Tonight those walls trembled, threatening to crumble entirely. The baby stirred, stretching his tiny arms and letting out a soft yawn. Amara's lips curved in a gentle smile, whispering, "You're safe now, my love." "I promise," Adrian watched silently, the words striking him in a way he hadn't anticipated. The baby's innocence, the trust in Amara's voice, it stirred something long buried. He felt an unfamiliar pang of guilt, of longing, of regret. Hours passed. Midnight arrived. The city outside hushed beneath a blanket of darkness, leaving only the quiet hum of the penthouse. Amara finally rested, eyelids heavy, leaning against the armrest of the chair. Aiden slept peacefully, tiny chest rising and falling, each breath a delicate promise. Adrian remained by the window, watching them both. For the first time in years, the icy mask he wore slipped. Tears, long denied and suppressed, welled in his eyes. He had never let anyone see him like this, not his employees, not the world, not even himself. He took a hesitant step closer to the crib, the reflection of the city lights catching in his eyes. The sight of his son, so small, so perfect, so utterly unaware of the chaos that surrounded him, pierced something deep in Adrian's chest. A sob caught in his throat, choked, raw, impossible to hide. He turned slightly, brushing a hand across his face, but the tears kept coming. A sound he hadn't made in years escaped him, quiet, tremulous, human. Amara, half asleep, sensed the shift, but didn't move. She felt the change in the air, the difference in Adrian's presence, though she didn't know what it meant yet. Adrian stood there, watching his son sleep, a man transformed by the weight of recognition, love, and guilt. Every ambition, every empire, every cold calculation of his life seemed meaningless now in comparison to the tiny life in the crib. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the vulnerability he had spent a lifetime hiding from. The responsibility, the fear, the hope, all crashing down in a single moment. He whispered, barely audible, into the silent room, I'm sorry." And as he stood there, tears streaming freely, he realized that nothing, not power, wealth, nor pride, could ever matter as much as the child who now slept under his gaze. At midnight, Adrian kneels beside the crib, fingers brushing Aiden's tiny hand, whispering through choked tears, "If anything ever happens, I'll protect you. I promise, my son." The penthouse felt impossibly large that night, yet every corner seemed to press in on Amara. She had stayed in the living room, rocking Aiden gently, whispering soft lullabies to keep him calm, while Adrian worked late in his study. The city skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but its beauty did little to ease the tension thickening the air. Amara's ears picked up a faint murmur from the study door, left slightly ajar. Curiosity and dread collided in her chest, urging her to listen, though every instinct screamed to turn away. "I destroyed those photos and messages," a voice said, smooth but icy. "She was pregnant and desperate for your money." Amara's heart skipped. The voice belonged to Adrian's mother, the woman who had sown lies, planted seeds of doubt, poisoned years of trust between them. A lump formed in Amara's throat. She had suspected manipulation, yes, but hearing it, so clear, so damning, tore through her resolve. Adrian's voice, low and trembling, broke through the cold air. "You ruined my marriage," he whispered, almost more to himself than to her. His words were sharp, jagged, filled with pain and regret. Amara felt a rush of conflicting emotions, anger at the woman who had orchestrated this chaos, sadness for the man who had been deceived, a flicker of hope. Maybe Adrian had been manipulated. Maybe the man she had loved wasn't as cold as he seemed. She leaned against the wall, hidden, every muscle taut, her hand pressed to her chest as she watched the subtle shifts of tension in the study through the narrow crack of the door. Adrian's shoulders slumped, a rare moment of vulnerability showing. He ran his hands through his hair, blue eyes shadowed with disbelief and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" he murmured, voice breaking. His mother remained cold, composed, yet a hint of satisfaction lingered in her posture. "I did what was necessary," she said, "for the family, for the name. You should be grateful, not angry." Anger surged through Amara, but she stayed still. She knew she couldn't reveal herself yet, not until she understood the full scope of what she had just overheard. The child in her arms stirred slightly, cooing softly, reminding her that she had a son to protect. Adrian's voice cracked again, trembling with fury and heartbreak. "You destroyed my life," he said. "Everything I had, everything we had, gone." He looked at the city skyline as if searching for answers in the distant lights. Yet no lights could illuminate the truth he had been blind to for so long. Amara felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The man she had believed cold, ruthless, incapable of love. He was human, vulnerable, capable of pain that mirrored her own. The mother-in-law's words cut deeper than any accusation Adrian had ever made. She had manipulated photographs, destroyed messages, twisted realities. She had turned a loving man into a skeptic, a tyrant of his own emotions. "You think I wanted this?" Adrian's voice rose slightly, thick with emotion. "I wanted us. I wanted to trust her. I wanted her in my life." His hands clenched into fists at his sides. "And you sabotaged everything." Amara swallowed hard, feeling a mix of anger and pity for both of them. She had protected her son from this woman's reach all these months, but now the truth was exposed. Adrian had been blinded by lies, yet he had loved, he had hoped, and that made the betrayal all the more cruel. The mother-in-law's eyes were cold, calculating. "You were too weak to see it," she said. "You believed her. You always do." Her lips curved into a slight, triumphant smirk. Adrian's chest heaved. His mind raced between anger, disbelief, and grief. Every moment of resentment toward Amara, every cruel word he had thrown during the divorce, suddenly felt hollow, misguided, stolen by someone else's manipulation. Amara pressed Aiden closer to her chest. The baby was sleeping, innocent and unaware, yet the stakes were higher than ever. She could no longer remain silent. She had to act, not only for her son, but for the man who had been deceived as much as she had been wronged. Adrian's voice softened, almost lost in the shadows of the room. You ruined everything," he whispered again, this time quieter, as if saying it aloud might shatter him entirely. He sank into the chair, hands running through his hair, eyes hidden behind clenched lids. Amara's heart ached, torn between the desire to reveal herself and the necessity of caution. She knew she had to wait for the right moment. She had to show him the truth without endangering Aiden, without giving his mother another advantage. The mother-in-law's smug expression did not waver. She believed she had won. She believed she still controlled the narrative. But Amara's eyes narrowed, determination flaring. The truth would surface. Adrian would see. And the woman who had destroyed lives would no longer have power over them. She took a deep, steadying breath, careful not to disturb the baby in her arms. Her mind raced with plans, possibilities, strategies. She would not let fear dictate their lives anymore. Adrian stirred slightly, running a hand across his face, unaware of her presence. The man who had been ruthless, cold, and seemingly unfeeling was showing cracks of emotion. He had been betrayed, yes, but the humanity inside him was undeniable now. Amara realized as she watched him struggle with his own pain that there was hope. Hope that he could see the truth. Hope that he could love again. Hope that they could reclaim what had been stolen from them. She pressed a gentle kiss to Aiden's forehead. "You will not be a pawn," she whispered. "You will know the truth, and we will protect each other." The mother-in-law finally spoke again, voice dripping with condescension. "You cannot undo what has been done. You cannot change the past." Adrian's eyes, once filled with icy detachment, now blazed with determination. "You will see," he said quietly but firmly. "The past can be corrected. The truth will come out, and I will fix this." Amara's heart raced. For the first time, she saw not just the man who had hurt her, but the man who could fight for them, who could reclaim what was stolen by lies and manipulation. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every unspoken word hung like a weight in the air. Every glance carried the power of revelation. Amara backed away slowly, keeping Aiden secure in her arms, heart pounding. The mother-in-law did not notice her departure, too consumed by her own triumph. As she reached the hallway, she whispered softly to herself, almost a prayer. "Soon, Adrian will know everything, and the lies will end." She pressed Aiden closer, feeling the tiny heartbeat echo against her chest. In that rhythm, she found resolve, courage, and a glimmer of hope for the future. Adrian's voice, still tense and raw, carried faintly down the hall. "You ruined my marriage, but the truth will save it." Amara knew it was time. Time to face the storm. Time to reveal everything. And for the first time since the wedding, she felt ready. Amara whispers to Aiden, eyes fierce and determined. "Soon Papa will know the truth, and nothing will ever be the same." The penthouse was unusually silent that morning, the city outside just beginning to stir beneath a veil of gray clouds. Amara moved quietly, every step calculated, every sound measured. Aiden slept in the crib, small chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of innocence, unaware of the tension that gripped the room. Her hands shook slightly as she packed a bag. A simple bag, nothing flashy, everything essential. Clothes, diapers, wipes, a few small toys, a life in motion, condensed into a single suitcase. She pressed a gentle kiss to Aiden's forehead, whispering, "We're leaving, and we'll be safe." The weight of the decision pressed on her chest, making it hard to breathe. But she couldn't stay, not in a world controlled by Adrian's mother. Not in a place where lies could tear her son from her arms at a moment's notice. Her movements were smooth, practiced. She avoided the cameras she knew dotted the corners of the penthouse, silent witnesses to their every action. Each moment felt like a lifetime compressed into minutes. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, gentle at first, then growing heavier, tapping against the windows in a persistent rhythm. Amara's heart pounded. Time was slipping. Every second counted. She took Aiden from the crib, wrapping him in a soft blanket, careful not to wake him. His small hand curled around hers, trusting, unaware of the danger looming just outside the walls of the penthouse. She whispered softly, "Stay close, my love." "I won't let anything happen to you." Adrian stirred in the study, still recovering from the sleepless night spent watching his son sleep, his heart raw with emotion he had long denied. When he rose and turned toward the living room, his chest tightened. The crib was empty. Panic seized him instantly. The bedspread, the soft blanket, everything confirmed his fear. She was gone, and so was his son. "Amara?" His voice was sharp, hoarse with disbelief and rising anger. He rushed through the penthouse, every second a surge of desperation. The rain had begun in earnest, streaking the windows with cold silver lines, mirroring the chaos in his chest. The city streets glistened with water, reflecting headlights and neon signs, each reflection distorted, blurred, like the world he had known, now warped by fear and uncertainty. Adrian's car roared through the streets, tires skidding slightly over slick asphalt. He ignored the honking, the warnings, the danger. Every instinct, every thought, every breath focused on one goal: finding them. Amara had moved quickly, cautiously, slipping into the shadows of the city, blending with the crowd, pushing the stroller through wet sidewalks, determined to escape without being seen. Aiden cooed softly, oblivious to the storm both outside and inside the man who was his father. Her eyes flicked nervously, scanning every corner, every reflection, every shadow for a hint that they had been followed. The rain poured harder. The streets shimmered like liquid mirrors, distorting the figures moving across them. Pedestrians scurried under umbrellas, avoiding puddles, unaware of the drama unfolding just feet away. Adrian's mind raced, replaying every possible scenario, every mistake he had made. How had she slipped past him? How had she taken his son? Each thought was a dagger, twisting deeper with every heartbeat. Amara felt the weight of the decision settle in her chest. Every step, every movement was a calculated risk. But she could not stop now, not when safety was within reach. She pushed the stroller across the crosswalk, heart racing, eyes scanning for danger. Aiden's tiny face peeked from the blanket, a smile playing at the corners of his lips as if sensing her anxiety. Her own lips pressed together in determination, refusing to let fear win. Suddenly the world seemed to tilt. A scream tore through the air, not hers, but that of someone in the crowd. Lights reflected wildly off the wet pavement. The stroller jolted as if caught in a sudden, unseen force. Adrian skidded into the street nearby, headlights slicing through the rain like knives. He spotted the empty stroller, alone, abandoned, a ghostly white shape against the dark asphalt. His stomach dropped, his heart stopped. No, no. His voice shattered into the storm. The realization hit like ice water. The baby, Aiden, missing. Adrenaline surged. Every muscle in his body tensed, every thought focused on one horrifying possibility. Amara had vanished, and with her, their son. Pedestrians froze, some calling out, others pointing, but Adrian barely noticed. He jumped from the car, running through the rain, soaked to the bone, boots slipping on the wet pavement. Each step was fueled by panic, terror, and a father's desperate need to protect his child. Amara, hidden in the shadows, felt a chill run down her spine. She had been careful, meticulous, every step planned. And yet, she knew something had gone wrong. Her eyes darted back to where the stroller had been, heart hammering. And there it was, empty. A scream threatened to escape her lips, but she swallowed it. The rain pounded against her, soaking her hair, her clothes, her very soul. She pressed a hand to her mouth, panic clawing through her chest. Where was he? Adrian's chest heaved as he approached the crosswalk. He froze, seeing the empty stroller. Rain mixed with tears, blurring his vision. Everything slowed, each droplet, each heartbeat, each agonizing second. His mind raced, unable to process, unwilling to believe. The stroller, empty. Aiden, gone. Amara, gone. The crowd had gathered, murmuring in fear and confusion, but Adrian didn't hear them. He didn't see them. His world had contracted to one horrifying moment. Amara crouched nearby, trembling, trying to discern any clue, any sign, any hint of where her son could be. Her heart pounded in her chest, deafening, unstoppable. Each second felt like a lifetime. Adrian dropped to his knees beside the stroller, fingers brushing wet asphalt, eyes scanning for the smallest trace. His breath came in ragged gasps, merging with the rain, blending into the chaos of the storm. The emptiness of the stroller was a void, consuming, relentless. Amara's eyes met his from the shadows for a brief moment. Her heart screamed, but she could not move closer. The danger, the risk, it was too great. Yet she ached to call out, to reach for him, to beg for help. Adrian's hands shook as he inspected the empty stroller. He called her name, voice breaking through the storm, desperate, raw, unlike anything he had ever allowed himself to feel. Aiden, Amara, where are you? The city seemed indifferent, lights reflecting off puddles, people scurrying, rain drowning out his cries. Time stretched, every second a blade twisting in his chest. Amara pressed Aiden close to her, shivering, heart pounding, mind racing. She whispered prayers, promises, anything to will him back to her. Every instinct screamed that danger was near, every fiber of her being focused on one goal: protect her son at all costs. Adrian's gaze swept the crosswalk again. The stroller, empty, the world, silent in its cruelty. The storm, relentless, the fear, utter, consuming, absolute. And in that moment the realization sank in, cold and suffocating. The baby was gone. Amara's hands trembled as she pressed Aiden close, whispering through rain-soaked tears. They have him. We have to find him, before it's too late. The rain had not stopped. It pummeled the city streets relentlessly, washing everything in sheets of silver and gray. Adrian's tires skidded across wet asphalt, headlights cutting through puddles like blades of light. Every second stretched, taut with panic, desperation, and an unfamiliar helplessness. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Every thought was a knife twisting in his chest. Aiden, his son, the tiny life that had suddenly brought both chaos and love into his rigid world, gone. He screamed, not a controlled, calculated roar like he often commanded in boardrooms, but raw, primal, untamed. "No! Aiden! Where are you?" The echoes of his voice bounced off the buildings, drowned out by the unrelenting rain. Every pedestrian scattered, umbrellas flipping, feet slipping on the soaked pavement, oblivious to the torment of a father racing through the storm. Adrian's chest heaved. Years of control, of dominance, of absolute authority crashed into a singular realization. He was powerless. His empire, his billions, his control over life and death, meaningless in the face of a stolen child. Memories surged unbidden. The first time he had seen Aiden, eyes wide, a small hand grasping his finger. The first laugh, the first tiny steps, all imagined, all treasured, all threatened. How had he let this happen? The phone vibrated in his pocket, a message from an unknown number. He ignored it at first, panic blinding logic. Then a single line appeared. "The child is safe with the driver. Come alone if you want him." Adrenaline surged, muscles coiling like springs ready to snap. The world narrowed to a single point: the driver. Aiden. Adrian found the driver's location, a secluded warehouse near the edge of the city. The tires screeched to a stop. He jumped out of the car, rain soaking him instantly. Boots slipped in puddles, but he barely noticed. Every second was life or death. The warehouse doors creaked ominously. He pushed them open, heart hammering, eyes darting through shadows. There, under dim light, was Aiden, small, vulnerable, clutching a toy, eyes wide with confusion. And next to him, the driver. The hired man smirked, a blade glinting briefly in the shadows, unaware of the storm about to descend upon him. "Step aside," Adrian growled, voice low but deadly. The man laughed, mocking. "You think you can take him?" Adrian's hands clenched. Every ounce of pent-up anger, fear, and love surged forward in a single, unstoppable force. With a roar, he lunged. The first punch landed cleanly, knocking the man backward into crates. The fight was swift, brutal, precise. Years of controlling empires translated into movement, efficient, unstoppable, a man fueled by desperation and love. Aiden whimpered, sensing the danger. Adrian dropped to his knees beside his son, scooping him up, holding him close. "Shh, it's okay, little one. It's okay," he whispered, voice trembling. The tiny fingers curled around his own, seeking comfort, trust, love. Outside, the rain fell harder, a curtain of water masking the storm within Adrian's soul. He carried Aiden from the warehouse, ignoring cuts and bruises, ignoring exhaustion. Nothing mattered but the small life in his arms. He reached the penthouse as dawn approached, wet hair plastered to his forehead, coat soaked through, eyes wild with relief and fear. Amara was there, standing in the doorway, watching him, a mixture of fury, fear, and disbelief etched on her beautiful face. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, adrenaline evident in every line of her body. Adrian sank to his knees before her, still holding Aiden close. Tears ran freely down his face, smudging streaks of rain and exhaustion. "I was wrong," he whispered, voice breaking. "I believed lies. I... I thought I knew everything, but I didn't. Please, come home." Amara stared at him, eyes wide. Years of betrayal, heartbreak, manipulation, everything she had endured crowded her mind. Her hand clutched Aiden's blanket protectively. The baby's small face pressed against her chest, innocent, trusting, oblivious to the storms that had raged around him. Adrian's chest heaved, every breath trembling with emotion. He had destroyed everything between them with his coldness, with his pride. And now, facing the worst nightmare of his life, he was stripped bare. No wealth, no control, no power. Just a man, broken, desperate, begging for a chance to make right what had been wrong. Amara's lips trembled, but she did not move forward. She did not reach out. Years of pain and betrayal weighed heavily in her chest. She had loved, she had trusted. She had been deceived by lies. Lies Adrian had believed, lies orchestrated by his mother. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but sharp with resolve. "I don't know if I can trust you." Adrian's eyes widened, shock and pain mingling with the raw vulnerability exposed on his face. I'll prove it," he choked out, trembling, raw, desperate. "I'll do anything, anything to earn your trust. I swear it. I'm not, I'm not that man anymore." The rain outside had slowed, dawn light filtering through clouds, painting the city in pale gold. Inside the penthouse, the storm of emotions raged stronger than any storm outside. Aiden stirred in Amara's arms, small fingers brushing Adrian's face. The gesture, simple and innocent, broke something inside him, a bridge of hope, a spark of redemption. Amara's eyes softened fractionally, but her resolve remained. She had survived lies, betrayal, manipulation. She would not let her son be hurt again, and she would not risk trusting lightly. Adrian knelt there, soaked, exhausted, trembling, yet determined. Every fiber of his being focused on one goal: to earn her trust, to reclaim his son, to repair the damage done by lies and betrayal. The room seemed suspended in time. Everything else, wealth, power, past mistakes, melted away. All that remained was the fragile, flickering chance at redemption. Adrian's voice, raw and choked with emotion, broke the silence again. "I don't care what it takes. I will not fail him. I will not fail you." Amara pressed Aiden closer. Her gaze locked on Adrian's, weighing, calculating, aching for the truth she so desperately needed to see. She had come this far. She had fought for her son, for herself, for the life they deserved. But trust, fragile and easily shattered, would not be given lightly. Amara whispers, voice low and wary, eyes guarded. I don't know if I can trust you. Yet. The weight of those words hangs in the room, a fragile bridge between heartbreak and hope, waiting for Adrian to prove he can cross it. The city skyline glimmered in the early evening, soft gold and amber hues reflecting on the wet streets below. Inside the art studio, the scent of paint and turpentine filled the air, a quiet sanctuary from the chaos that had once defined their lives. Amara stood before a canvas, brush in hand, but her movements were slower than usual, her mind elsewhere. Aiden's soft coos came from the little crib in the corner, his tiny fingers reaching out to explore the world with innocent curiosity. The studio had been untouched for months, a place where Amara had poured her heart into colors and lines, each stroke a piece of herself she could claim as her own. Tonight, however, something felt different. A quiet tension, a calm before a storm that promised change. Footsteps echoed softly across the wooden floor. Amara glanced up, startled. Adrian stood there, the world outside seeming to vanish around him. No tailored suits, no corporate armor, just a man raw with emotion, eyes wide and searching, as if seeing her for the first time in years. I closed everything, he said quietly, voice trembling. The wedding, the media, all of it. Gone, Amara's brow furrowed. Why? She asked, cautious, wary. His gaze softened, the familiar coldness replaced by something warmer, something she hadn't dared hope for. Because none of it matters, he said. Not the money, not the image, not the empire. None of it means anything without you. Amara's heart skipped. She lowered the brush, her hands trembling slightly. Her mind raced, memories flooding in. The divorce, the betrayal, the months of hiding, the nights of fear and uncertainty. Could she believe him? Could she trust him again? Adrian stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. I was wrong, he admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. I believed lies. I let my pride ruin what we had. But I can't. I can't let another day go by without telling you the truth. Without showing you that my love is real. The rain outside tapped against the windows, soft and rhythmic, a soundtrack to the quiet storm of emotion filling the room. Amara's chest tightened, tears forming unbidden. She had loved him once, with everything she had. And though the betrayal had cut deep, the man standing before her now was different. Humble, vulnerable, desperate. Adrian dropped to one knee in front of her. Not as a CEO, not as a man defined by power or wealth, but simply as a man in love. His hands were open, unassuming, his eyes shining with raw sincerity. Marry me again, he said, voice breaking. Not as a billionaire, not as someone with control or power, but as the father of our child and the man who can't breathe without you. Amara's breath caught. The brush slipped from her fingers, clattering softly to the floor. Her hands trembled, her heart racing faster than it had in months, years even. Tears slid down her face, blurring her vision, yet she didn't turn away. Aiden stirred, tiny arms reaching up, sensing the weight of the moment. Amara's heart swelled as she lifted him gently, placing him in Adrian's arms. The baby's small hands curled around Adrian's fingers, trusting, innocent, bridging the gap between heartbreak and hope. We're already home, Amara whispered, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. Adrian looked at his son, then back at Amara. Everything he had lost, everything he had feared, seemed insignificant now in the presence of them both. He held Aiden close, feeling the life and love pulsing through his son, and finally understood what mattered most. His empire, his control, his past mistakes, none of it compared to this, to them. The rain outside slowed, light breaking through the clouds, casting a warm glow across the studio. It seemed almost symbolic, a blessing, a cleansing of the pain and betrayal that had shadowed their lives for so long. Adrian stood, gently holding Aiden, and took Amara's hands in his. "I will spend every day proving to you," he said, voice firm but tender, "that I am the man you deserve. That we can build a life, a real life." Together, Amara's tears fell freely now, a mix of sorrow, relief, and joy. Every fear, every doubt, every betrayal of the past seemed to dissolve in that moment. She smiled through her tears, feeling the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Adrian leaned closer, eyes searching hers for permission, for a sign, for the love they both had fought to protect. Amara nodded slightly, heart swelling with certainty she hadn't felt in years. This was love reclaimed, trust rebuilt, a future they would fight for together. He kissed her then, gently at first, tentative, savoring the moment, memorizing the warmth and softness he had missed for so long. Aiden cooed softly, tiny hands reaching for both parents, as if approving, as if sealing their bond. The studio, the city, the rain, it all faded away. All that remained was them, a family reborn from pain, betrayal, and heartbreak. The past no longer defined them. The future stretched before them, uncertain yet full of promise, full of love, full of life. Adrian pulled back slightly, eyes glistening. "I love you," he whispered, voice hoarse but unwavering. "Always. I never stopped, and I never will." Amara pressed her forehead to his, tears mingling with his, a quiet surrender to the love that had survived everything. "This time," she said softly, "it's real." The baby nestled between them, cooing softly, the embodiment of hope, of love, of everything they had fought to protect. They stood together, united, stronger than the pain, the lies, the betrayal. Together, as a family. The city lights outside flickered in quiet harmony, the rain's gentle residue shimmering like a promise. They were home, not the penthouse, not the money, not the empire. Home, because they had each other. Amara smiled through tears, her hand resting on Adrian's chest, feeling the steady beat of a heart that had finally learned vulnerability, humility, and love. Aiden's small hand clutched theirs both, bridging the past and the future. And in that small, perfect moment, they knew that nothing could break them again. Adrian's lips met hers once more, slow, deliberate, tender, and filled with a love that had been tested, broken, and rebuilt. No games, no power, no lies, just the three of them, bound by truth, redemption, and a love that would endure. They kissed, and this time it was real. Amara whispered softly against his lips, eyes shining with tears and certainty. "We're already home, and nothing can take this from us." Adrian hugged them both tightly, heart full, finally knowing that the past was behind them, and the future, together, was theirs. The rain stopped outside, light spilled into the studio. Life began anew.